Well, Wizards has officially done it. February 12th, 2018, BNR announcement, Jace the Mind Sculptor and Bloodbraid Elf has been unbanned. And it's interesting because there's so many people that are surprised by this announcement. So many people are angry, are furious, are really, really upset that Wizards of the Coast did this. And it's funny, too, because, we talk about Wizards, paying attention to social media and looking at all this. And there's been so many people that say, no, this shouldn't happen. No, this shouldn't happen. And yet they did it anyways. And they did explain the reasons for doing it. And let's go ahead and move over to the article that they wrote. I will post a link below so that way you can easily get to it. So, effectively, Monday, February 19th, so 1 week from today, Jace the Mind Sculptor and Bloodbraid Elf will be unbanned in the modern format. They cite how over time the power level of modern increases naturally as the card pool grows, and which is true. I mean, that does happen. That is part of what happens when you then introduce new cards to the format. And oftentimes they'll unban cards because now there are cards that can deal with it. And sometimes, they're typically they'll make sets, for the standard format, but oftentimes they'll target certain things in a certain way, like Fatal Push, to sort of deal with cards that are taking over a format. For instance, Tarmogoyf was a very hard card to deal with until Fatal Push was printed, as well as some other cards, right? But now, when there's cards that they can print to put into the system, which can help combat certain strategies, that's when they take a look at the modern format and decide, is there something to unban? So, here they say that both cards are individually powerful and originally banned because they were simply too good. Now, I didn't play in a standard with Jace the Mind Sculptor, nor with Bloodbraid Elf. But I've done some research and looking at some decks that were being played then, as well as Worlds 2010. And we'll take a look at those in a minute. And, they talk about here and how the rest of the format has caught up in power level. And that these two cards have been on the short list for quite some time to be unbanned, which I agree. Like, for instance, I thought back in Eternal Masters, they were still looking to unban this card. There was a lot of signs pointing to the possibility of Jace the Mind Sculptor being unbanned even back then, in my opinion. Not saying everybody agreed with me or not everybody saw the same thing, but I've been saying since Eternal Masters, it's starting to look like Wizards is basically going on that path to unban Jace the Mind Sculptor. And I'll explain the reasons why in a few minutes. Bloodbraid Elf, I don't think is a huge deal. I think Jund and Naya will become decks again. Maybe not 100% in tier 1 strategies, but we'll definitely see them in the rotation. And they go on, and I'm not going to read this word for word, but basically, a lot of the things that they're saying here is, ever since Modern's return to the Pro Tour, they've been really taken a good look at it, as well as looking at it via Magic Online. And they've been testing against it, right? And, you know, this one, I think the time is to do it now because we just had a Pro Tour, right? So there's plenty of time until the next Modern Pro Tour to work out the kinks in the meta and the meta to work out itself together. You know, like brewers and pro players alike, you know, we spent all this time to test and put things together. Now, here's the other thing too. It's a great time because they've already were planning to print Jace the Mind Sculptor Masters 25, and it was printed in Eternal Masters. So one of the things that there's always been this complaint is supply over demand. And so now there are some people, you know, saying that, oh, well, this is just a cash grab to, you know, sell Masters 25. And that's a possibility. I don't think that's a improbable statement. But I think at the same time, I think this was very calculated. And they purposely took the time, picked their spot, and also strategically made sure that when they called this card to be unbanned, that there was going to be supply coming up the wings as they released this announcement. And, like I said, I am very, very positive they've been working on this since Eternal Masters, right? So they wanted to discuss here, they're discussing the reasons for the changes, right? Like over time, competitive Magic has evolved to be a fast and proactive format. You know, the bar for tapping 4 lands during one's main phase to cast a single spell is quite high, often restricted to cards that threaten to win the game immediately. For example, top 8 from Pro Tour Rivals, cards that cost 4 mana aren't instants and are far and few between. In watching the format evolve, we observed that decks seeking the control game have struggled against explosive win conditions of their own. Out of hope that Jace the Mind Sculptor will provide yet another option in an already diverse format, giving controlling decks an alternative way to close out prolonged games. And I don't disagree. But here's the other thing in Modern, there's not a lot of long, prolonged games unless you are a control player. Like, so for instance, I play Jeskai Control. Sometimes games end quickly. I don't even get to the point where I can cast, let's just say, Cryptic Command effectively. And that's a 4-mana spell. It's 3 blue, but it's still a 4-mana spell. Modern, I see Modern as a pretty quick format, and really you play on your opponent's turn more often, or you need to, in order to gain that edge, especially in Modern. Playing sorcery or creature spells that aren't immediately establishing a threat. Now, Jace the Mind Sculptor, you can basically look at the top card of the target's library, and you can put that card on the bottom of that player's library. It's a great function. I mean, I'm not downplaying the power level of Jace the Mind Sculptor. The 0 ability is draw 3 cards, and then you put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. It's basically a 4-mana Brainstorm, which is like Riverwise Augur that we have today. Yes, it's repeatable, but if you're doing it turn 1, you're playing a control shell, it's going to be really, really hard to keep Jace the Mind Sculptor on the battlefield for more than one turn when we have so many ways to deal with it in the Modern format. Now, again, don't make a mistake of me saying that this is downplaying Jace the Mind Sculptor's power level. is a very powerful card. However, I just don't feel that it's as backbreaking as some people believe or remember in the standard format. And we'll get back to this in a minute, because I'm going to show some deck lists from a Throwback Standard gauntlet, which I'm guessing they used some of that information from that event online to make this decision, as well as the 2010 Worlds deck list as well. So next, we'll just talk about Bloodbraid Elf very quickly. This was banned in 2013. I think this is fine. I don't think Bloodbraid Elf is going to really change things. It may change how Living End builds, but I don't know if it's really going to affect Living End all that much. I do think Jund will be a deck that will definitely become tier 1 again. I think there's a lot of signs to point to Jund as well as Naya, especially with the current modern mana bases. So I think overall, I think the Bloodbraid Elf and Jace the Mind Sculptor unbanning is fine. It'll be interesting to see if Jace stays unbanned. You know, there's always this sort of, you know, oh, well, do they unban cards just to make money and then ban them later on, and then citing that we realize that we made a mistake and blah, 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 blah. That's absolutely possible. But I think in this case, they spent a long time calculating this choice, because I think Wizards of the Coast, albeit most people believe that they don't make a lot of great decisions, and sometimes they don't, but we all as human beings don't make the right decisions all the time. I think this decision was heavily tested and contested internally, and I believe that they made a decision that made sense for the longevity of the game and not for specifically a cash incentivized sort of sale, basically. So let's move on really quick. I'm just going to show you a few things. This was a Throwback Standard gauntlet that they did back in August of 2017. And this was basically, you know, Throwback Standard with the days of, you know, Splinter Twin and Jace the Mind Sculptor, Stoneforge Mystic decks, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and just take a look at some of these decks. And this is the Naya deck that I was talking about, right? Johnny Vengeance, Bloodbraid Elf, Shoot Mob, Wild Nicottle, Noble Hierarch, Wally Thoktar, Ranger of Eos, Bane Slayer, Lightning Bolt, and Path of Exile. So this is, you know, obviously this would change slightly. I don't feel like this is far off on what a Naya build could look like in today's modern. Clearly, there's certain ones like Goblin Runeblazer, probably Woolly Thoktar, Wild Nicottle. Like some of these have better, well, maybe Wild Nicottle would stay in, but there's definitely better cards to put in some of these places. But this kind of just gives you an idea, right? Jund is another one that we talked about. That was one of the top 8 decks in Worlds around this time. And this one is running, you know, Garruk the Wild Speaker, Putrid Leech, Bloodbraid Elf, Siege Gang Commander, Broodmate Dragon, and what was the other, you know, Maelstrom Pulse. So again, this has the makings of a really good shell to come back into Modern. Again, I don't think either one of these really change the format drastically, but there is going to be some change to the meta for sure, right? Then you move on to the Jace decks with Conscription, with Jace the Mind Sculptor and Elspeth. This is actually not a bad idea. And actually, here's the other thing to think about, right? Is some of these cards have already been starting to be reprinted. We talk about Lotus Cobra, Knight of the Reliquary. A lot of these cards are finding their way back into the eyes of the deck builder, right? So these master sets. Here's another one, Caw-Blade. Everybody talks about how bad Caw-Blade was in the meta, right? With Stoneforge Mystic being one of the main drivers with Jace the Mind Sculptor, right? And I think in certain respects, this deck won't really work, but I'm sure they'll find another way to build something very similar to Caw-Blade. Blue-Black Control, which, you know, I was talking about this not too long ago in one of my top decks. Blue-Black Control is, I think, now a serious contender to come back, which I'm pretty excited about because that was one of the first control decks I ever played in Magic back in the day. So, Blue-Black Control, I'm pretty excited about. But again, they started, just printing some of these cards, like Grave Titan, Spreading Seas, I think is going to be in Masters 25 with Jace the Mind Sculptor. So yeah, I think Black Sun Zenith was in a Commander product, but it was also in a couple other things, I think. Blue-Black Control, I think, is going to be good. Boros Stoneblade, without Stormforge Mystic, I don't think it'll be a deck. And here's the thing. I think this now sets up that Stoneforge Mystic will not likely get a reprint, or sorry, not a reprint, a unbanning with Jace the Mind Sculptor being unbanned. I think I've always thought that it was one or the other. It'll be either Jace or Stoneforge Mystic. Now, I'm pretty certain Stoneforge Mystic will not get a unbanning as long as Jace the Mind Sculptor is unbanned. So, there's that too. Splinter Twin is another one. Now that Jace is been unbanned, I don't think Splinter Twin will get an unbanning at this point. I just think the combination of Stoneforge Mystic and Splinter Twin with Jace the Mind Sculptor in the Twin Blade decks is just too ridiculous that it would I think it would break the modern format. But I could be wrong. But based on what I see and what I've tested in Freeform, I think this is a deck we will never see in Modern. They might try to do something similar, but we just don't. There's no way. There's no way. Same thing with Splinter Twin. So then we won't see that, but that's a different deck. So different cards. Valid Cut Ramp, Mono Red Shrine, and that was pretty much the top decks during that time. Now let's go ahead and 2010 Magic the Gathering World Championships top 8 standard deck lists. You have the Jace the Mind Sculptor deck. This is the, let's see, is this the conscripts, right? No. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is very similar to either, like, this is like Blue-Black Control, right? It's pretty, yeah, this is Blue-Black Control with a splash. So Preordained. So Preordained we won't see. I mean, we have Opt. It's not as good as Preordained, but it's what we have in its place. We also have Preordained and Serum Visions. I think Mind Break Trap gets better. So yeah, that's the Paulo deck. That is pretty much blue-black control. What's next? This is the green. This is a green ramp deck. Here's another blue-black control. This one with a little bit more of the Grave Titans, Spreading Seas, Ratchet Bomb. So like blue-black control, like I could actually see this happening, coming back as a deck. Maybe some different pieces in it, but almost card for card, this is what we would see, I believe. Here's another one. I think, yeah, this is, again, another blue-black control. So that's 1, 2, that's 3. 3 blue-black controls. Here's a mono black. No, oh, is this Grixis? I wish they would put the names of the decks on these ones. Like these old ones, they don't have names on there. So this is black, red. Anyone know this deck? Let me know in the comments below. This one, I mean, this makes sense to me during that time. Another blue-black control. So that's 4. Blue-black control, that's 5. And this is, oh, interesting. This is like, this is blue-white control. Blue-white control with planeswalkers. That's pretty sweet. So yeah, that's what I think we will see in as far as decks. I mean, it's going to take a few months to see where everything lands. It's going to be a mad rush of a lot of people trying to figure out how to use Jace. But then, you know, at some point, I think we'll settle into like maybe 1 or 2 Jace decks that'll really be either good or tier 1 level. And then maybe like 1 or 2 tier 2 style modern decks. Now, cards that I would have to say we should think about or spec on, and ones that I've already thought about when it comes to making sure you keep an eye on if you want to play Jace the Mind Sculptor or any blue-black control. And that's going to be cards like Jace Beleren, which is currently $8. If you look back in the day, let's see, he was as high as $10. This might become a 2 or 3 of in any of these blue-black control strategies, so just keep that in mind. And I think the Lorwyn ones will definitely, I'd see this going up to about maybe $10 to $15 in the near future. Could even go higher, just depending on if Jace Beleren gets a reprint at some point. I know we have Core coming back up, so it is a good possibility that Jace Beleren will come back in Core 2019, especially with Jace the Mind Sculptor getting unbanned in Masters 25. That's roughly, what, a 6-month cycle into Core 2019, so it might be time to print another Jace. We'll see, though. I'm not really sure. The next is Grave Titan. This is currently an $11 card. I think at one point, this is about the highest it's ever been. I think our Devastation release was, let's see, it spiked up as high as $12. So this is one of the highest that it's ever seen. But I do think that this is a 2 of at minimum in those blue-black control strategies. And considering that this has only had Core printings and a Commander 2014 printing, if they don't print this sometime soon, this will definitely go up in price. It could reach the 17, 16 mark. The next thing is Opt. Now, it's already jumped when it got jettisoned back into Modern. This can only go up more because they are going to be using this a lot in the blue-black control strategies. So we'll see what happens. That's my thoughts for now. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the unbannings. Was it terrible? Was it something that you are like, oh, I'm not going to play Modern anymore? And tell me why. And I'd be happy to discuss in the comments below with you and on your thoughts on the unbanning of both Jace and Bloodbraid. Until next time, I have another video coming out soon. But I actually I stopped editing in the middle of this announcement to bring you this video. So until next time, folks, have a good day. I bid you farewell.